We got that one. Hello, everyone. Thank you for dialing in for the BioVerse episode 20. Today's topic going to be very relevant given what's really going on outside the webinar. But before I get started, I would first, give a little bit introduction of who we are and why to this topic, our speaker, and a little bit background. So with that being said, let me just share my screen real quick to tell you who we are as a BioVerse. And also, Jamin, please give me a thumb up whether you can see my screen. Can you see my screen now, Jamin? All right. So today we're going to talk about the trends of Asia to Europe pharmaceutical license deal, plus some, kind of a Europe to Asia collaboration as well. Before we started, I know there's a lot of our audience probably is not the first time you're dialing in BioVerse. For our new guests and new attendees, welcome. Hope you like what we're going to talk about today. A little bit about BioVerse, where we believe a science sparks business in medicine. The Verdia monthly webinar co-produced by iSuite community, GP, and the BioSpark group. They are all three Asian biotech or Asian life science researcher focused nonprofit, all based in the United States. Ourselves is a global organization. We registered in New Jersey. GP registered in Philadelphia, and BioSpark registered in Boston. There's the three of us. You can learn more about us. Visit our website or visit our LinkedIn to learn more about us and also BioVerse. A little bit about BioVerse. That's really our proudest collaboration among three of us. Today we are very happy to announce now we have a website. If you want to watch our previous episode, which actually in total, including today, is 22. So you can visit our website. Also, for people who probably more familiar with YouTube, we have a YouTube channel as well. You can visit it. And please leave your comments and let us know what we can do better so we can serve our audience, yourself better next time. Today is my great pleasure to have a very prestigious panel of speakers who involve a lot of deal making between Asia and Europe, as well as Europe to Asia collaboration. I will invite the speakers to spend probably 1 minute, introduce yourself quickly, and then we can have more time when we talk about the specific deals later on in the webinar. So I would first invite Chris from the left hand most to begin.
Thank you, Leon. Nice to be back at this BioVerse event. Yeah, my name's Chris Sheldon. I'm SVP of BD at GSK, based here in the UK in London. I am a scientist, a chemist by training, and report to our head of R&D and chief scientific officer. Just 30 seconds on GSK. Look, we're a global pure play biopharmaceutical company. We have a pipeline and portfolio focusing on 4 therapy areas in human health, covering prevention and treatment. So that's respiratory, immunology, and inflammation, particularly looking at the liver, lung, and kidney diseases. Oncology, focused on blood cancer, so that's hematology. Also women's cancers, lung cancers, gastrointestinal cancers, so a range of solid tumors. HIV playing a role in ending the global pandemic. And then finally, infectious diseases as well, particularly focused on vaccines for prevention. Looking forward to the discussion, Leon.
Welcome back, Chris. Derek?
Yeah, thanks, Leon. This is Derek Yuan. I'm a partner at LYFE Capital. So I am also a scientist by training. So I'm a chemical biologist in PhD. Later on, I did a short period of time at a consulting and actual research before joining LYFE Capital in 2018. I'm currently based in Menlo Park in the US, but LYFE has multiple offices across the globe. Maybe a quick words about LYFE Capital. We're a healthcare-focused private equity VC fund, managing about $2 billion total AUM. We have a global footprint, including the US in the East Coast, West Coast, as well as Singapore, Korea, Japan, and China. Total about 40 people. And we invest companies from early stage all the way to the public stage, not only therapeutics, but also medical device tools and diagnostics, CRO, CDMOs as well. Looking forward to the discussion.
Fantastic. Michael?
Hi, and thank you very much for the invitation to join you today. My name is Mike Patten. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of Harbour BioMed. I'm based in New Jersey. However, Harbour is a global biotech specializing in the discovery and development of complex biologics. We were established in 2016, and today we have a footprint across China, Netherlands, and the US. We have a strong track record of deals and collaborations with many known pharmas and biotechs globally. Look forward to the discussion.
Fantastic. James?
Hi, Leon. Thanks for inviting me to the panel. About myself, head of BD for Adcendo. Been with the company for 3 years. Previously spent 12 years in consulting and pharma with AstraZeneca in portfolio strategy, and then business development in sincere and innovative biologics. PhD trained oncology. Briefly on Adcendo, we are a Copenhagen headquartered ADC company with operation in the US and Australia, and asset-centric, exclusively focused on first-in-class and best-in-class programs that developed based on deep understanding of target biology, optimized linker payloads, and the indication of interest. We have a very experienced leadership team consisting of many of the ADC veterans, and we are currently at clinical stage with 4 programs in the pipeline, 2 in the clinic, and we've raised over 225 euro from US and European investors. We're actively looking for partnering selected programs to further accelerate and optimize our pipeline. We look forward to the discussion today.
Fantastic. People said this capital winter looks like you guys are doing pretty well. So I'm gonna invite our last speaker, but definitely not least, Angele, to introduce yourself and your company, please.
Sure, thanks. And thanks also for the invitation to join the panel today. So hi, everyone. My name is Angele Maki, and I'm the Chief Business Officer at Callio Therapeutics. Callio is a brand new biotech. It was announced just earlier last month. It's based in Seattle and Singapore. I, however, live in the San Francisco Bay Area. We announced our launch earlier last month along with $187 million Series A. And our focus is that we are pioneering multi-payload ADCs. And the technology came out of my previous company. So we share a management team, which is Hummingbird Bioscience, also based in Singapore. A little bit more about me. I've been doing business development for 20 plus years now. I've worked at a number of big pharma and biotech companies. I've worked across therapeutic areas and modalities, but I've spent most of my time in antibodies and oncology. And like many of the other panelists here, I'm trained as a scientist. I did a PhD in biological chemistry at Stanford and a postdoc at Scripps. And then I did made an unusual move in that I moved into BD right after my postdoc. So look forward to telling you a little bit more about Callio today.
Yeah, sounds really exciting. And then I would like to invite my co-host, Jiamin, to share a few words about yourself.
Thanks, Leon. It's really honored to be the co-host today. My name is Jiamin Zhuo. I'm currently working at EMD Serno, is the German Merck in the Global Strategy Insight team. My background is also very similar to probably most of the panelists today. I'm a PhD in neuroscience, later moving to the business side, working in the consulting, equity research, and also big pharma, small biotech, mainly in the early commercial strategy, including some BD work as well. So on this side, I'm also working with Leon in our iSuite community. I'm the editor for our weekly newsletter and discussing the latest trend in the industry and also assess interesting BD deals across board. So today it will be a good opportunity to have the chance talking to our panelists, understand the latest trends. I'm really looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Fantastic. So without further ado, let's dive into today's topic. I will first start with a little bit kind of background. We and the iSuite community, we just have this paper published, a short read on Nature Review Drug Discovery last week. And among all the analysis about we call them China to West pharmaceutical license deal in 2024, one thing probably really relevant to what we are talking about today. If you break down those deals by deal counts and upfront payment, by the headquarter location of those companies. I mean, given that a lot of the company actually global company like GSK, they cannot really say they're European company, but just based on headquarter location. One interesting thing is if you look at the among the 48 deals, the paper identified last year, actually European headquartered company closed 23 versus 22 from the US, and European actually outspent the US by $1.1 billion, which is like a 4.6 billion total versus 3.5 by the US companies headquartered in the US. And if you look at the table, I select, if you zoom in the top, I would say around 20 deals. All those like red highlighted deals were with buyers whose headquarters in Europe. And you can say quite a few, especially if you look at the top 5, 3 out of the top 5 actually were with the European headquarter European companies. And the financials are quite significant. That's number 1. And also, if you look at the trend in 2025, it seems like to be continuing the whole trend. As you may recall, 2 major, I would say Asia to Europe deal. The first one is the AstraZeneca with the Harbour BioMed, and as well as with a few other deals announced by Pascal and his executive team a few weeks ago in China. Another one, as you probably recall, in this like a red hot obesity space, Novo Nordisk also announced another deal, which is a phase 1 assay with about like less than 40 patient, I think 36 patient data, phase 1 in China. And that deal involved like $200 million upfront payment and multi-billion biobucks in total. So that's pretty much why we think this topic is so relevant today. Again, a lot of buyers are global company, not necessarily European company, but their headquarters over there have a little bit different, I would say, reaction to what's really going on today in like a macro world. With that being said, set the stage. Let me dive into probably the questions we discussed with the panelists today, and also start sharing the screen so people can say who are the panelists. The first question is really to everyone, if you may spend 1 or 2 minutes. So could you each of you briefly share a standout deal or experiences, kind of a MBA mini case study style, like a pitch, and highlight the unique dynamics of Asia to Europe partnership, and what key lessons you think you learned from those 1 or 2 deals? Probably start with Chris.
Thanks, Leon. I would make a terrible MBA student, by the way. I'm going to break the rules from the start.
Very few of us have MBA degrees, so don't worry about it. We all have a PhD.
Thank you. I mean, look, that's like asking me to pick my favorite child, but look, we've been very active at GSK, working with multiple companies in China. We've done 5 deals, actually, all in the biologic space, 3 antibody drug conjugates, an antibody deal, and a T-cell engager deal across oncology and immunology and inflammation, something which your Nature review picks out nicely, Leon, actually, 2 of the main therapy areas. So I just want to go through them, actually, because honestly, they're all fantastic partners. So we did 2 deals, one in October 23 and one in December 23 with Hansoh Pharma for 2 antibody drug conjugates, a B7H3 and a B7H4 targeted ADC. The H3 program is looking at a broad range of tumor types in oncology, lung cancer, sarcoma, head and neck cancer, prostate cancer. And that was a $185 million upfront deal. The H4 deal was an $85 million upfront deal, less broad development program, but looking at a series of gynecological tumors. We did an antibody drug conjugate deal with Duality as well, an emerging biotech in China. In fact, I think they disclosed their Hong Kong IPO plans earlier this week. That was an option deal for a potentially best-in-class ADC. Again, latest technology like Hansoh, and that would be looking at gastrointestinal tumors. And we acquired an asset from Chimagen, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, actually. I should have worked that out before, for a T-cell engager, CD19, CD20, detuned low affinity CD3 for a range of autoimmune diseases, particularly looking at B-cell depletion. in the bloodstream and deep tissues. And then finally, we acquired Aeolus for a long-acting TSLP after new company creation from Hengrui. That was at the start of 24. Look, what I think runs through all of these 5 deals is the eagerness of Chinese organizations to work with Western companies, whether in Europe or the US. Really deep commitment to the science, to collaboration. I always say that drugs are developed, they're not discovered. And I think it's, we'll come on to it later, I think it's one of the things misunderstood actually with a lot of these deals. Companies acquiring assets and data, and the data is often being generated already by the Chinese partner. And there's a real commitment to take that innovation, the data, and turn it to a medicine. And you can really feel that hunger in every one of the deal cases I've worked on, the willingness to coordinate, collaborate on global clinical studies, and really get those medicines to patients. So I'll stop there, knowing I've probably gone over the 2-minute rule, Leon.
Yeah, no worry, no worry. So I really want to use the first question to let everyone have a little bit kind of quick intro of the high level your deal. So I probably can invite Mike, the same thing. I believe you have an MBA, so you know the drill or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure again I could fit it into 2 minutes, but yeah, I mean, I think you gave a highlight of the deal earlier, and of course, we're Harbour, we're really excited about this. I mean, it's really very significant deal, is quite unique in terms of the size and the scope, and it's really, what we really excited about is that it really shows increasing collaboration and trust between partners. This is our 3rd deal, so it's really about that sort of evolution of the relationship, and then in addition to the collaboration, also there's the equity investment from AZ as well, which really shows a strong commitment to a long-term relationship, as well as trust and validation of Harbour. And of course, this is really important for the deal dynamics. And this is really a long-term collaboration. It was 5 years with the option to extend by another 5 years, and also involves the co-location of research teams. So it's really very exciting for us, and we think it's quite unique and demonstrates the value, the evolution of deal making across the region as well. With my MBA hat on, I think just in terms of lessons learned, I would say that the important thing is that it is our 3rd deal, so it really demonstrates the importance of building that relationship. Really to be aware that you're on a journey with your partners, and that it's about the quality of your execution, building that relationship, and then maintaining that to then reach the level that Harbour and AZ have.
Fantastic. So Derek, try to pretend you are an MBA class.
Yeah, you correctly pointed out I didn't have an MBA, so I'll try my best, but please educate me on what is MBA style. So yeah, I was fortunate to get involved or manage 2 deals that is involve Asia and Europe partners, and I think both case one case is actually in your list as a ProfoundBio that was acquired by Genmab for the RENA-S as well as the whole platform. So I think that's a great example. I think that's of showing that a company originally in Asia, but with with actual operation in both US and China, and then collaborate with the European biotech companies to develop the asset globally, right? I think that's a good example, and I think in that case, not only the asset, the lead program, the folate receptor ADC has a potential to be best in class. I think that's a lot of the reason for the acquisition, but also the ability for ProfoundBio to quickly develop different ADC at an efficient cost and time, in both China and the US. That kind of a infrastructure also attract Genmab for the deal. So that's both on the asset and platform side. And we also involve another transaction between one of our portfolio company in China called SciWind. that our license several incretin products to UK headquartered biotech company called Verdia Bio. That is a new co. We also participated in the financing as well for for the obesity play. We think has a very differentiated products. Given that we are a shareholder of SciWind, we've seen the very interesting and potential best-in-class type of data generated in China of the GLP-1, as well as the very interesting early stage programs, amylin and amycretin. So those are another example where validated innovation that can happen, and also we can have build up a very interesting new company in both Europe and US. So yeah, just want to highlight 2 deals quickly.
Fantastic. So James?
Sure, yes, happy to share our experience. So we have done quite a few deals in the last 2 years, and actually, interestingly, all of them are sourcing from China. And I think being an ADC space, it's not necessarily a coincidence. We see the rise of advances in technology in certain modalities, particularly ADC and a few others. So one example I want to highlight, so we had a multi-target platform license with a company called Duality Bio, Chris also mentioned earlier, utilize their DTAC platform. And the collaboration started with a first-in-class target we have with one program, and then more later on moved to a multi-target platform license across all of our first-in-class ADC programs. And another notable deal is that we did with Multitude Therapeutics later last year. That was a best-in-class tissue factor ADC at the peri-IND stage, where we had ex-China rights for the program, and that's as you mentioned, to a large extent enabled. We had a fairly large Series B round in November last year. I guess the key sort of lesson from us is that being a small biotech, we are really quite flexible in our ways of doing deals. Similarly, with other biotechs, and we were sourcing innovation globally, obviously across, without specific geographies. And it turns out many of the innovation we are looking for happens to be in China. Although I would, to fair to say, I think initially when we start reaching out, back in 2022, we were a little bit hesitant, whether, the science or the innovation or IP coming out of China would be solid. And we did have those validations. I think being a smaller company, we're very flexible in the way we can work with the partners. We struck quite a few MTAs, and the Chinese companies were very open about running those MTAs to allow us to test the technology in our hands. We're able to do those early testing very efficiently, and that's I think is a critical factor, allowed us to secure those emerging science from Asia, particularly in China, quite early on. And I think there's a Chinese saying, the first person to eat the crabs. I think Adcendo is probably one of the first European biotechs starting eating the crab right out of China. And then I heard from industry peers that following that kind of acting as itself as a validation for the technology coming out of Duality, and that helped some of the subsequent deals. So I think being flexible and pragmatic, and really sourcing, reaching out globally to find the best innovation, I think that's the lesson for us, regardless where the geography of the science is.
Fantastic. Now you had your crab, and are you worried about someone going to eat your lunch?
Yes, that's another issue we're facing right now.
Another issue.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna definitely invite Angele to share her unique perspective. Her strategy is different, sounds like from everyone else on the panel. So Angele, please go ahead and share a few quick words.
Yeah. So just for the audience's benefit, I've been asked to talk about the formation of Callio as a standout deal in which I've been part of. And it is a really unique story that I've said to my peers is going to be a case study. So I mentioned earlier that the ADC technology and assets that are in Callio came from Hummingbird. And so let me give you a little bit of background on why Callio came to be. Hummingbird actually started as a therapeutic antibody company 10 years ago. They built their own antibody discovery technology. And they have been very successful with that platform. They've put a couple of antibodies into the clinic, and we've out-licensed 3 different antibody programs as well. So they make high quality antibodies. But then more recently, the scientists at Hummingbird developed a multi-payload ADC platform. And so now we had 2 platforms in one small Series C company with the most advanced products just still being very early stage in the clinic. And we wanted to raise a lot of money to really put the gas on the ADC platform and assets, get them into the clinic. But we had this conundrum of our most advanced asset being very early stage clinical. And obviously, if an investor was looking at Hummingbird, that would be their focus. So really, we had to decouple the 2 things. We had to decouple the ADC assets and platform from that clinical asset in order to set the valuation around the ADC assets and platform and to be able to raise money just focused on that, and also to bring in new investors. So that's the course that we decided to pursue. So what we did is, and fortunately, we had support from Fraser, who was already an investor at Hummingbird. They decided to be the lead on financing Callio as well. So they created Callio as a brand new company, and there was nothing in it at the beginning. And then in parallel, they negotiated a license agreement between Hummingbird and Callio for the ADC platform in oncology, as well as the 3 lead ADC programs. And then in parallel, as I mentioned, they were raising the Series A. And again, we had the support of Fraser to lead that round, which was super helpful. So in the end, we actually set out to raise 120. In the end, we raised $187 million in our Series A. So it took longer than we expected, but we're very delighted with the outcome in that we raised more. We brought in we brought along some of our existing Hummingbird investors, but then we were also able to bring in some new ones. So I think that underscores the support from the existing investors and then the excitement from new investors as well. And I think I often get asked, why do I think that we were able to raise so much money? I think it's for a few reasons. One is that the founders of Hummingbird, Pierce Ingram and Jerome Boyd Kirkup, have had success at Hummingbird. It's a 10-year-old company. We had a great lead with Fraser helping us. And then obviously the company is working in a super hot space, which is ADCs and more specifically multi-payload ADCs, where innovation, I think, is being rewarded and people are willing to make bets. So that's kind of the summary of how Callio came to be.
Fantastic. So I think we cleared the first, probably longest question. Everyone now have your case presented to the class. Right now, it looks like 105 people in our classroom. That's going to be interesting. Now let's go back to the individual cases, and hopefully you can share some of the principle. The first one, really to Chris, from your deal search lens, what are the key factors global pharma prioritize in Asia assets compared to the US pharma, I would say in this case? And how do the regulatory, cultural, market differences between, I would say, the US team and the European team when they look at the Asian originated asset?
Oh, I found the unmute. Yeah, where shall I start? I mean, look, it's a feature of our industry, right? We all have to replace product revenues and product cycles because of patents. And we know that 65% of all revenue, the last time I checked with an Evaluate article of revenue, comes actually globally from products which have been acquired externally. So it's without question, which is why we're on this panel, that the source of innovation has just radically shifted. And your Nature review highlights this nicely, actually, Leon. And I think it's really ramped in the last 2 to 3 years. I think over a third now of deals that were signed last year with an upfront of 25 million or more were sourced from China. And I think the latest Stifel report I saw from Tim Opler and team quoted that at nearly 40% now. Look, every deal's a snowflake, and I think I've seen kind of 5 trends and 5 types of deals announced. We've got the plain vanilla licensing deals. We see those almost every week. We've seen the asset acquisitions where there may be less royalties and milestones. So we saw Merck with Curon for a CD19 T-cell engager, GSK, Chimagen, which I mentioned earlier. I think M&A is less common. We did see AstraZeneca Gracell, although we have seen pharma acquiring companies after they've been created through venture creation. Probably Aeolus is a good example of that. I think the ADC that Genmab picked up that's just been discussed on this panel as well. And look, those venture creation have been huge, right? Verdia, which I think was the one from Forbion and Calera from RA, and Atlas was over 400, and then we've seen biotechs picking up assets as well, Avenzo, Idea, and of course some of the panelists have talked about on that here. I do think there's different levels of sophistication, however, in China. I know some of our contracts took longer than others, getting into the world of data sharing, thinking about manufacturing and supply considerations, less relevant for the deals we've done because they've all been early stage deals, so either preclinical, early stage clinical deals, and in the case of Aeolus, a mid-clinical stage asset. And I think the theme has been mainly best in class, but I really think we're about to transition to more first-in-class opportunities. And look, the best data point I can give you on the regulatory question, Leon, is after we signed our deal with Hansoh for the B7H3 ADC, we've received 2 regulatory breakthrough designations from US FDA on China-only data sets, actually, for small cell lung cancer and for sarcoma. So again, I'm getting the contracting right around the relationship, around the data sharing, around the ability to use the data to inform each other's clinical studies, I think is absolutely paramount. And that's been one learning for me and one thing that we've built into a lot of our deals and collaborations.
Yeah, fantastic. Other speakers, panelists, can you chime in any observation when you work with the big pharma?
Yeah, I think probably I have a quick question for Chris. Thinks that this is your 2nd time coming to our webinar. I just wonder, what have you seen anything changes? Because I know, at least for China biotech, they're more eager to looking out licensing all these opportunities. Did you see anything changes, since your last visit to us versus now? Any trends?
Yeah, I think one thing we've seen change, and Mike might be the best person to answer this. I think we've seen multiple partnerships with the same company, which I think is testament to the strength of a partnership. So we have 2 deals, like I said, with Hansoh. So we did 1 ADC, and then 3 months later, I think the Harbour deal with AstraZeneca, again, Mike will be the authority on this, not myself, but I think we've seen a breadth of a deal there that we haven't seen prior, based upon my read of the press release. And if I had a crystal ball, looking into the future, I think we're going to transition from single asset deals to potentially broader deals, actually, between Chinese-based companies and the West, whether it be in Europe or the US.
Yeah. Mike, anything you want to add? Yeah, I'm just curious.
I mean, I completely agree with Chris. I think that as people, as companies gain comfort and see the benefits that they gain from working with Chinese biotechs, that they're going to expand the deals, and the nature of the deals are going to evolve and mature.
And actually, we did that ourselves with Shifei, a different type of deal, but in the vaccine space, where we started with Shingrix, our shingles vaccine, a commercial arrangement in mainland China. And then as we got US regulatory approval for Arexvy, our RSV vaccine, we partnered again a second time with them, subject to regulatory approval, of course, still in China, but there's an option to expand that partnership there as well. So I think that's something that we are going to see change more and more.
Yeah, fantastic. Before I hand my host to Jiaming, I just want to remind all the audience, if you have a question, please use the Q&A button in the bottom of your webinar, and we can address all the questions in the last few minutes. So we do gonna leave some time for you to ask questions to our prestigious panel. With that being said, Jiaming, please take it from me.
Thank you. I think that's a very good time to shift to ask more questions to Mike, probably given that you are sitting at the end of the table, try to do seeking out licensing opportunities. So what's the biggest hurdle for your company as a Hong Kong stock market listed company to seeking more deals usually in Western world? What's the key hurdles? What's your thinking and what your company's strategy on that part? Thanks.
Yeah, so I think for us, as I mentioned at the beginning, I mean, we've been established since 2016, so we have a long track record of working with many pharmas and biotechs globally, and so we have a lot of lessons learned and relationships that have been established. And also, we view ourselves as a global company. We have offices and labs outside of China as well, and we think that's very important because that really gives us a global footprint. And I think be interested to get the panelist view in this, but I think really this is an industry that works globally. That that when we talk about Europe and Asia as our Europe and American companies, many companies of significant size are really operating globally. And so for Harbour, where we have that global footprint, it really gives us the ability to work with different partners in regions and areas that make sense for them, and really gives them flexible access to the Harbour platform that makes sense. And so we think that that's a compelling way, and it's really the key lessons learned for us as we work with partners globally.
I see. Thank you. Yeah, I understand that, as you mentioned, your company actually has a global operation in multiple countries, including, I think you have a technology root in Dutch, in Netherlands. Actually, your technology has been building from a Dutch company, I think Harbour Antibiotics. So based on your company's presence across multiple countries, so especially having specific connection to Europe, I'm just curious about how this European biopharma ecosystem has any impact as you see in the Asian biotech, maybe not only your company but the overall presence.
Yeah, it's a great question, and we've really been reflecting on this leading up to this panel, and I think it's really it's very nuanced in terms of the companies that we're working with and how they're structured, and I think it's very difficult to generalize. But obviously, yeah, we do have a a heritage with Harbour Mice coming from Netherlands, and so we have some long-term relationships. But I think for us, our experiences are really it's really dependent on how the companies are structured, our partners are structured, and we really view it as are they operating globally? How are their teams structured? Where are they based? And how are they viewing their BD strategy? Is it global, or and how sophisticated are they with interacting with different regions? And really, we flex to work with them, but I think it really is dependent on the other companies and how they're structured and approaching.
I see. So the last question, because I think probably you have the best knowledge, because I understand many companies really want to, starting from local, but generally become a global presence. So any challenges when did you see that if, a biotech want to expand their footprint across different countries, any challenges you see or any learning lessons you have to share?
Well, I mean, I think we're obviously living sort of a real life challenges at the moment, and I think that's a key aspect is tracking tracking political headwinds and changes in environment and approaches. I think probably the best example now is we're really seeing a change in the value and the recognition of the innovation and science coming out of Asia. And I think that, obviously back in 2016, our approach and our discussions would have been very different around the Harbour platform versus today. And we talked about, we're seeing a real change in evolution and deal structures, which are reflecting the growing recognition of the quality of science that's coming from China.
I see. Thank you. So it's mainly driven really by the innovation, globally.
So. Yeah.
Thank you. So anything our panelists want to add? Otherwise, I'm going to, grill Derek. So Derek, I know you are the investor. You have the money. So when you're looking at, based on your experience, especially like Profound, all these, big deals, what did you see the unique part regarding this kind of European, Asia, deals? Any difference, and based on this experience, what's your current view for your future investment?
Yeah. So I mean, in general, I think the Profound deal is one we mentioned, right? So it's happened to be with a European partner. But when we discussing with different opportunities, I think in the end it hands on fundamental science. Whether there's a synergy between the different partners, whether they have the right team, right resource to move the program fast and forward to the to benefit the patient as soon as possible. So I'll say I'll say maybe it's less of issue whether it's a European or a US partner. It's more about the fit between the two partners. And also another thing is that it's good it's good to see more and more Europe and Asia deals, especially under the current geopolitical situation. I think for investors, for biotech, for industry, players, always it's good to have healthy deal flow, right? Because that's how innovation get generated. That's how people get rewarded. That's how the whole ecosystem work. So it's important to keep this healthy flow of deals or of transparent assets, instead of like having some artificial factors to block or to prevent those things from happening. So from that point of view, it's good to see the trend start to. We see the deal making world shifting to multi-center, right, situation versus past more US centric world. So that also means a couple of things, right? First of all, if you are a BD person at a biotech company, you probably need to expand your activities to more regions, right? Not just networking with the US partners, but also with potentially other Asian countries like Japan, like Korea, Singapore, or as well as Europe, right? There's a lot of activities in different regions. So it's important to keep your network broad. That's that same thing is true for investors as well, to think about the next investment. And another implication, I think, is that because the deal can happen anywhere, it also means that the competition is not just one region, right? So for same class of assets or for same disease, when you look at the competitive intelligence, it's getting more and more important to have a comprehensive review of the assets of the different programs across the globe, right? Not just US, but you have to look at Asia, have a look at Europe, so that your program is you have a good understanding, correct understanding of the positioning of your programs. So that's become even more important because the deal can happen in different regions.
Sounds good. So it seems like, we are getting into a larger stage with more and more players from all over the world. But at the same time, it became a smaller village because any, players or competitors, could potentially get into the competition, and really you need to consider, all these potential players. And another question for you, Derek, is I think as investors, what do you see the recent trends, especially in capital allocation or syndications, when you observe for those kind of cross-region deals?
Yeah, we see a lot of collaboration. For example, in one of the deal that I mentioned earlier, the SciWind Verdia transaction, it was led by both, European as well as US investor, and we syndicate across US and Europe as well, and also Asia, right? So, that's I think that's a sign that I think we are seeing more diversity in terms of the makeup of the syndication. We see investors from I think the capital came from different places for starting the company. I think that's a really good sign, meaning that especially and then the current situation, right? Sometimes, especially right now, the biotech market has been down for almost 3 years. So it's very difficult for a lot of funds. But for new companies to raise capital, it's important to tap into maybe some of a pool of investors that you previously don't think is in your list. But now you probably need to also reach out to those funds as well to increase your probability of success for fundraising.
Thank you, Derek. Now we will switch to James. I really like your first crab statement. So that does come with the reward, but also you probably learn firsthand any challenges to be a European biotech, but try to seek innovations in the Asia space or the place at the global stage. What's the challenges? Did you face any misunderstanding, when you first reach out? Just curious about your story.
I think being a sort of a Chinese, originally from China, I think that somewhat helps perhaps on bridging any of the sort of cultural and language barriers. I would say being a European company, not for the platform deal, perhaps on the asset side, we are generally not perhaps well capitalized compared with the US peers, or certainly not with the pharmas. So, especially as the premiums for Chinese deals are picking up in the, particularly in the last year, we're probably not the best to compete, on the financials, if the partner is, specifically seeking for that. So that demands us to be more creative in how we're structuring deals, how can maximize the value for both parties, and looking at, to share the proceeds, share the upside, in the future, in the future upside. So I would say that was sort of, and we were in a couple of positions for bidding, against other players, a lot of times the US biotechs, and as well as pharmas, and we lost. So that was, I would say certainly was a challenge that we face. Not even mention that we were fundraising sort of at the back end of it. So sort of, you were, building a plane while you're still flying it. So that was, certainly the challenge, sort of from the capital, from the finance point of view.
Thank you. So I understand that you definitely lost some battles, but you do win a few as well. So my second question is, what do you see there's an untapped opportunity or advantage, like in the environment or things for European biotech, some of these Asian potential partners may overlook because they may not be that familiar with European biotech.
Yeah, definitely. I think, being European companies who perhaps not so, they're generally less sort of outspoken compared with the US companies that are out there, sort of have a sort of more, physical presence, sort of at conferences and etc. So generally, sort of European companies a little bit more lower profile. But I think, through the more the deals we've been doing with Asian biotechs, I think the values of what European companies are bringing are still slowly being recognized. And in particular, I would say, Europe in particular, early sort of discovery, translational research, and it's really the hotbed, for early drug discovery and translational research. And Adcendo, ourselves really taking pride in our first-in-class approach. We specifically, when the company was founded, specifically developing a differentiated first-in-class programs, and this is based on our deep understanding of the target biology and the disease. And by partnering, with companies, particularly where they perhaps have access to the assets, have an option to the assets on a regional basis, and that is, that value is gradually being recognized, through working with a European company where we're sort of specializing in different things, where the Asian partner provide, the expertise on the technological side of things in terms of antibody engineering, linker payload chemistry, where the European partner is able to provide deep target biology understanding. So I think there is a good synergy and capability complementarity. So where the Asian partners could, gain the know-how, perhaps, and help them to enhance their early drug discovery and translational capability, as well as have, perhaps access to, to the rights for those first-in-class programs, on a global level.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that.
Can I ask a quick question actually to the whole panel, since we were talking about Gems unfortunately lost a few bits and get outpriced by the big pharma, and you have the whole party here, right? So we have Angele and James, Mike. You guys are biotech, right? Let's in case you need to get some innovation from China, and you have a Chris. He always have a much bigger wallet. And what's your pitch to the Chinese sellers? You should come with us instead of take them like a few times bigger paycheck from Chris. I mean, I heard from your James. What's your pitch, Mike? If you were need to, let's say, probably if you have to like license an asset from China or like some collaborator, and you want to make sure they work with you instead of just immediately go with Chris.
Sorry, who's that question to me?
Yeah, so let's say you have to outcompete Chris for some Chinese innovation as a as a licensee, right? To get some innovation. What would your pitch?
Yeah, so I think for Harbour, our pitch is obviously we think we have a differentiated platform, and we believe that coupling that with our presence, particularly in China, brings speed to discovery, which is critical, and a degree of efficiency as well. And so I think that we feel that coupling those elements, our experience, our track record, and validation, it really is very compelling for any company wishing to work and discover novel complex antibodies.
Fantastic. So Chris, obviously, oftentimes you win, sometimes you lose. If you can share with us, what's a few times people, let's say, what would be your pitch? Like, comments that asset you really want to, should I go with you?
Yeah, I mean, by the way, it's hard to pick any one thing that's underrated in China for me. I genuinely, I'm not saying it because I'm on a panel with you guys, but speed, quality. Chinese companies really know how to structure deals now. and data, like that data point is we're accessing data. You might find this quite funny, actually, but we actually believe, and I better be careful what I say, but we were outbid actually on a couple of our deals by smaller companies, but the Chinese company still decided to go with GSK. So I'm not sure if some of the comments are fully universal on this panel, but I think what is respected and valued is the breadth that the pharma can bring. Of course, that scale is rather unprecedented to develop in multiple geographies, multi-parallel studies as well, in pivotal studies. The Aeolus deal is a good example where we will run in GSK asthma studies, chronic rhinosinusitis with nasal polyps, and now COPD studies all in parallel. That's 3 parallel phase 3 studies. So the devil's probably in the detail of the asset. But that speed and unprecedented scale to develop things in parallel, I think, is something where we have the edge.
All right, no more question for me. Sorry, Jiamin, I interjected. That's too good to miss. Get back to you.
No problem. Yeah, I think it's at least that's very interesting to hear from Chris that the big pharma still could be outbid by a smaller player, but I think that situation is probably unique for every BD deals. But that brings some hopes to our, small biotech folks. So finally, I think we always talking about, Asian biotech, but most time we focus on China. But we all know that there are multiple parts of the Asia, especially such like Singapore, has become a very important emerging biotech hub as well. We love to hear, Angela, from your experience, help us understanding more regarding the ecosystem in Singapore. What kind of unique advantage it brings to the global stage?
Sure, happy to do that. So I'm not Singaporean, nor have I lived there. In fact, I'm a Canadian living in the US right now.
Global citizen.
Yeah, exactly. But I have been working with the team since late 2023, and I've been to Singapore. So I've come to appreciate what Singapore has to offer. And I do think it is uniquely positioned to contribute to the biotech community. And I'll list out a few reasons, not necessarily in order of importance, but these are my thoughts. So first of all, really educated talent pool there that speaks English. That makes it really easy. And it's actually a pretty international pool, I would say. Hummingbird has about 80 people there, a very international group, a lot of Singaporeans, but people from Europe and South America and Middle East and stuff. So people who maybe are in science but might have a hard time getting a visa to go into the US, for example. Also, the country is pretty westernized, so it's culturally it's not as challenging or daunting maybe for some people or some companies. IP standards are consistent with the expectations for US and European companies. And then one thing I think that is sort of standout is that there's very strong government support for industry in the country, with biotech being one of them. So they provide economic support. They are building biotech communities as well. So I think that certainly helps. They've got 2 big universities there, and it's not that big of a country. And then another very obvious factor is that it's a very safe country, both climate-wise and politically. So you don't have to worry about hurricanes or typhoons or those kinds of things. It is very hot and humid, I will say. That's been my experience there. And so I've also noticed there's a lot of pharmaceutical companies do have a footprint there. And so I think it's often seen as kind of an entry point or a gateway to the rest of Asia. So I think that will continue to develop, but the country is small. So like my motherland, Canada, small country, so you don't have the same economic base, but yeah, I think it's small but mighty.
I see. Thank you very much. Yeah. I think your personal background, I know you work in, multiple big pharma companies, so now you're moving to these small Asian biotechs and also learning all things. So, and also I think just try to understand your personal experience and do you feel like the Singapore or these biotechs are actually attracting, as you mentioned, more and more talents of the world? And where do you see how Singapore is going to play, maybe a bigger role than its size in the biotech global stage? yeah, any future trends, any talents, attraction or things? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm sure everyone has heard a lot of what's going on in the US right now. So I think that will be a deterrent for immigration, whether it's the immigrants' choice or just the inability to come here. I think that will be a deterrent for talent flowing into the US. And so I think people who want to pursue science and biotech or pharma will have to choose other places to live and work. And so Singapore, there's a lot of Europeans in Singapore, and not just Brits. For those that don't know, Singapore was a British colony. So there are certainly a lot of British people there and Australians, but there are a lot of other Europeans there as well. So I think exactly as you sort of alluded to, I think the people will choose to move to other places like Europe and Asia, perhaps Singapore, to either start their companies or start their careers. And so I think Singapore will continue to grow as a biotech hub. I also think you didn't specifically ask this, but a lot of the Asia deals recently have been from China specifically. I think inevitably deals will start to come out of other places. I guess there's been some from Korea as well, but I think inevitably there'll be some coming out of Singapore as well. And hopefully Callio will be one in the near future.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so we really appreciate all the panelists share their insights. I know we are a little bit over the time. I just hope that we can extend maybe 5 to 10 minutes since we have lots of questions from our audience. Yeah, so if I may, I will open the podium to everyone. Right now, we do have a few questions from audience. Probably the first one and most obvious one is the recent tariff. As we know the situation. Yeah, I know it's very new, but just love to hear any comments from panelists. If you have any view or anything you think or what you hear, love to hear something from you guys. Thanks.
Happy to go first. I mean, probably not quite the answer you're looking for. It's obviously hot off the press, but all I can say is I think everyone on this call is in this industry for one reason, and it's to get medicines and vaccines to patients who desperately need them with unmet medical need all around the world. And patients don't care where drugs come from. They want innovation. They want the very best treatments, the sort of treatment you'd have a loved one or a family member on. And the narrative, in my opinion, hasn't changed there, and we'll continue to source the best innovation wherever it exists, and science will have a path forward.
Thank you, Chris.
I'll add a comment as well, and I think I saw it among one of the questions too. So it's not directly related to the tariffs. I think the nearest term concern for the industry, especially our company, is what's going on with Health and Human Services and FDA. I think there's the gutting and the mass firings in these organizations. I think is very problematic. And will there be people there to review INDs and BLAs and stuff like that? I think that's the biggest concern. Is just I don't think we can predict what turnaround times are going to be like, or how. And I guess a related note, how they're going to view these things as if they'll be as more open-minded.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we know that the near-term FDA is really probably facing lots of short of staff, and yeah, the review timing, could be in jeopardy. Yeah, definitely a concern.
Yeah, I would just say that really we're in a period of high uncertainty, and I think it's important to be to be very flexible and thoughtful about how you're approaching deals, operational structures and so on. And we continue to be nimble and flexible according to the changes that come.
Derek, any comments from an
Yeah,
investor?
maybe just to add that it is a very fluid situation. So every day we have to evaluate what's going on new. But overall, I think the tariff has less impact on early stage innovation and drug discovery, given that I think a lot of the rhetoric is around manufacturing, API manufacturing, on that. So that will play a role in some of the commercial products or late stage products. But given that in general, cost for medicine is a small fraction of total value. So that still could be impact, but not as much. But early stage innovation, we don't think right now there's going to be significant roadblock for deals. Although we'll continue to look at other things going on, and there's recently there's a committee in the House about innovation in China and how US can invest more money into biotech sector to help solidify the leading position of US innovation. But I think that's more on the positive side, because that's not really trying to block in other countries, but is instead trying to invest in US to help with the innovation here, which is, I think, is more on a positive tone. And lastly, on the FDA, I totally agree. There's a lot of uncertainty there. Who is going to be the new leadership? Whether they'll continue to support innovations, support different science-based, evidence-based approval process. So we need to see. And maybe another point is that maybe it's possible to really think about what other regions for regulatory discussion early. Besides FDA. Right. So that's something to consider.
Yeah, just to add what the panelists have said, I think, being a smaller biotech, I think we are probably in a less favorable position to withstand, those macro shifts than large pharmas. And so it's really kind of staying, flexible and start to build different optionalities that includes, your runways and your portfolios. So all of that needs to be considered, and supply chain, of course, giving sort of the resurface of this Biosecurity Act. And then if you have supply chains out of Asia, then that's another things to pay more attention, because things could really change, overnight. Exactly. So we just watching very closely how the space is moving, and stay pragmatic and have options open.
Thank you very much. Yeah, for the interest of time, I think we will very quickly finish our webinar. But by the end of this webinar, I really appreciate every panelist here to share all their insights. I think it's great to hear that our industry is really a global community. We really sourcing for innovation anywhere in the world, and we also open to collaboration to anywhere in the world. Depends on their unique space. Biopharma has many opportunities. So lastly, I also want to show our slides is to remind people that if you really enjoy our BioVerse episode, you really enjoy our weekly newsletter, you do have the sponsorship opportunity. I'm also in charge in the iSuite community for our sponsorship. So I will just use this opportunity to shout out, say that please contact us. You can see the email on our slides, that please feel free to contact us for any sponsorship needs. We have our monthly BioVerse. We also have our newsletter weekly, have more than 4,000 subscribers with more than 60% of click and open rate. So lastly, I really want to say our appreciation for every speaker in today's webinar. We are really looking forward to next month. We are recap of AACR 2025, and also June for recap for ASCO Bio 2025. So we will have more webinar coming and present you the latest change in our industry. Thank you again, and probably see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.